I am. All right. All right. Well, thank heavens. We are, hey, Bernadette, everybody like and share, like and share, like and share, like and share. All right. In five, three. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you on Thanksgiving, during the Thanksgiving week. I pray that you're going to have a blessed Thanksgiving. Everybody, every moment that we spend with our loved ones is precious. And if you don't have anyone to spend the time with, make a little bit of space. And if you see someone who's lonesome, bring them in. This really should remind us that we are here to love one another. And so I pray that everyone is on their way to a blessed holiday. But haven't you noticed? I haven't really seen people trying to cook turkeys on TikTok or in social media. They're telling us how to cook wings, Robert Patillo. I said, I think this turkey might be too expensive this year. What do you think? I don't know. Attorney Robert Patillo, brilliant political analyst. You can catch him on all kinds of platforms. My soror attorney, Anastasia Sinat. You make me proud to be a Delta, my girl. Of course,
Yeah.
President of the Haitian American Lawyers Association of Illinois, the brilliant attorney Mark Fancher, political analyst, social critic, and author. And we are welcoming someone new to the show, a young man of tremendous promise, Adal Regis. He is a candidate for the second congressional district congressional seat he is running, and I wish him the best. I wish him the best. Everybody, let's get right to it. You know, if this story came up 100 years ago, maybe even 60, okay, give it 70, maybe we would not have blanched or winked. But today, maybe we've made some progress because when you hear that two Texas men plotted a coup of a Haitian island and that they were going to kill all the men on the island, enslave the women, and sexually abuse the children and carry out their sexual fantasies on the women and the children. You would say, no, that can't be so. Ah, but these young men, two young men from Texas, Gavin Weisenberg and Tanner Thomas, both of Texas, 20 and 21 years of age, they came up with this idea, or are they reaching back into history? Think about that, everybody. It sounds so absurd today, but when you really think about it, I guess that's the way colonialism works. And so I wanted us to talk about this because they joined the military. One went to the firefighters academy. He flunked out, but they really plan to go into an island that's already inhabited, from 87,000 to maybe a little more than 100,000 people, according to different reports. They plan to go and take over the island, kill all the men, rape the women, explore their intimate fantasies on the women and the children. It sounds bizarre. It is. But is it really that foreign to us? Because they really did prepare. So I'm going to go around the table here. I'm going to start with Attorney Anastasia Sinat. What do you make of this story, Attorney Sinat?
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me, Santita Jackson. I wanted to really tell you that when I first heard this story, I kind of laughed. I thought the level of stupid that must exist in the minds of these two men from Texas cannot have been real. In my mind, when I first heard the story, I thought the news must be lying because the level of stupid that a person must have to go to an island that has over 80,000 inhabitants and think that they can take a sailboat and some firearms and some homeless people in order to capture an island. For what purpose? There is no purpose. They must have been high on drugs, something. It just did not make any sense to me. But legally, right? Legally speaking, the conspiracy in order to commit that kind of crime on a foreign soil will land, if they're convicted. So these are just allegations at this point, but if they're convicted, will land them in prison for life. Now, the other thing that I think is more reasonable as to what's really going on is these two young people in their 20s, in their early 20s, are just sick individuals that were caught with child pornography on their phone. And the child pornography that they captured on their phone is really what they're going to get convicted of if it's true. And then they'll get maybe 15 years or a little bit longer, maybe 30. But I really was shocked. All that Haiti has gone through, all the country has gone through, including getting into the World Cup, as you know, Santita. We just qualified for the World Cup.
Oh, right.
I think we are the only ones where we did not have a game in Haiti on the home country soil, and we still qualified. So Haiti's been a lot of things, but for these two individuals to not really understand and to think they can just speak the language and that two little white boys gonna land on black soil and just take over was crazy. That's how I felt when I heard it.
I mean, you took out the French. I don't get it. A dollar Regis. I mean, tell me how did you react to the story and what would you do? Should you should you make it to Congress? Uh, what would you like to say before that body? But let's start with your reaction to this story.
And firstly, thank you, Santita, for having me on the show today. And look, my reaction was a bit similar to Anastasia. I thought it was ridiculous, but at the same time, I had to take a step back and process of the fact that how in this day and age, how we've seen white supremacist rhetoric has been emboldened. Let's be clear. Uh, Last year, we had a major campaign in which Haitians were being dehumanized. And here at home in the US, where we were told that we're eating people's pet and their pet dogs and cats, right? And then even former Mayor Rudy Giuliani has something to say as well, in which, again, adding to the stereotypes about us and attributing, if you will, the condition of the country to just uh, essentially us being inferior, if you will, for lack of a better term. What I say is this: the fact that these two gentlemen thought that they could go to the first Black Republic that is known for actually fighting against white supremacy, and not only in Haiti, but also in Latin America. They chose that country itself, where one even went to the Air Force to learn how to be able to invade the country,
Mhm.
and then even took the time to learn Haitian Creole and figuring out how to infiltrate. What I think we're seeing today is the fact that, again, they are trying to make, I think this is a product of the fact that white supremacy is becoming a little bit, again, normalized, and folks are bold enough to be ready to do, to actually to be ready to take an action as ridiculous as such in this day and age. Now, as a member of Congress, the reality of it is this: we live currently right now in divisive times where we're being pitted against each other, whether it's based on our ethnic differences and even based on race. And we know who wins. It's those who've always benefited from it for years. As a member of Congress, what I would want to do is serve as a bridge builder, remind us again that we have more in common than we have that separates us. And for instance, if we want to lean a little bit on Haiti, let's remember that not only this was a Haitian, I mean, this was a country built by immigrants, but also even Haiti played a role into shaping this nation's history for Haitian blood, even bled in this nation, as we have a monument in Georgia Savannah that's dedicated to commemorate the fact that Haitian bled for the American Revolution even before they bled for their own. So it's a matter of essentially using that platform to remind us that we are a nation of immigrants. We all contribute to this nation being as great as it is, and that in order for us to be able to move forward so that we can lessen or mitigate or perhaps even eradicate this type of thinking of white supremacy, that we remind us that what we have in common, we should focus on that, or those values, rather than the things that are dividing us, that they have been using to divide us throughout history so that only a few can benefit and profit over the rest of us.
Attorney Mark Fancher, your reaction to this story, your reaction to this story, your reaction to this story. Please write something about this. This is how I met Attorney Mark Fancher in Black Agenda Report. Please. Dwight McKee said, I've been waiting for you. Where have you been all my life? Attorney Mark Fancher. What did you think when you heard this story?
Well, it actually did not come as much of a surprise to me because I have always known that Beavis and Butthead are drawn from reality. And that the only thing that distinguishes these two gentlemen, and I use that term lightly, is the fact that they chose to act out many of the things that people fantasize about all of the time. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein had his own island. Why shouldn't they? And I think that it's firmly rooted in a long history. There's a book called The Conquest of Paradise, written by Kirkpatrick Sale, which talks about Columbus's earliest adventures and his first time visiting Hispaniola, and his diary entry. The first diary entry that he records when he sees the Taino is, "They will make good servants." And it goes on to explain how within a very short period of time, the population was reduced radically in the midst of mass sexual abuse and sexual crimes that were committed against the indigenous population. So there's a tradition here, a well-established one. The idea of a few good white men going to a place that's populated by people of color and dominating them and conquering them and enslaving them and killing them is something that we know very well historically. And so this doesn't really come as much of a surprise. I think the thing that concerns me more is the extent to which these two individuals are representative of a generation. Uh, this country, and when I say this country, I mean the United States, has really suffered a serious spiritual death. And I think that much of it has really harmed a younger generation that has been fed a steady diet of violent video images and has in many ways become isolated not only by technology but by the recent pandemic. And I think it has created on a large scale mental instability and social isolation, alienation, and the opportunity for individuals to really lack a grounding in the types of values that would prevent them from drifting into this type of very perverse kind of fantasy life that, in this case, they chose to act on. And I think it really, for those who care or are concerned, it's a wake-up call to really reevaluate the spiritual health, the morality, and the values of a society that is in rapid decline.
Attorney Robert Patillo, your thought about this story?
Well, I think these young men were just trying to have an authentic Thanksgiving celebration. Because if you listen to their plan and you listen to what the Pilgrims did, the same damn thing. You come to a foreign land, you enslave the people. Then when they tell you the Thanksgiving story, they never explain to you how exactly the Pilgrims could speak to the Indians. Well, it's because several years before they came, they kidnapped and enslaved many of them, took them back to England, taught them English, and then when they came back with these enslaved Indians who spoke both languages, that's how they were able to communicate. They also forget to tell you that 2 generations after that first Thanksgiving, that the grandchildren of those colonists launched a brutal war against all the Native American tribes, and that the Uncle Tom Native Americans who joined with them helped them wipe out those tribes and then were murdered and enslaved themselves. So what exactly is the difference between the Thanksgiving holiday and what these men attempted to do? If you look at it from a practical perspective, it was only a question of who's writing the history book. And if you think for a moment, because I refuse to believe that these 2 young men were just simply acting on their own. One of them went to the Air Force for training. One of them became a firefighter for training. I think one of them flew to Thailand to take naval classes to learn exactly how to pilot ships and boats to go over there. They were working on getting the resources to get weaponry to go there. They were recruiting homeless people and other extremists to be part of their army. They weren't planning on there to just take a canoe over with 2 people and then start shooting people. They were raising a militia. So who was financing those things? Who paid for them to take Creole classes? Who even put these things together? It's a far deeper hole than just 2 people with twisted fantasies. In doing a decade plus of criminal defense, I know crazy people. Crazy people don't make plans. And then when the crazy people do make plans, crazy people don't act on those plans in a finite manner to build towards goals. So that we need to be digging deeper into the families of these individuals, to the social circles of these individuals, the online chat rooms and the chatter around them. The same way that whenever there's a white school shooter that shoots up at elementary school, we start finding out everything about them. We should be doing the same thing for these people, because you may stop these 2. These 2 are probably the patsies who just were sloppy enough to get caught. We need to find out what the underlying conspiracy is, because as we know, the civil conflict and strife going on in Haiti is not domestically produced. There's not a gun that's produced on the island of Haiti. There's not a bullet that is produced on the island of Haiti. These are outside forces that are attempting to control the government and prevent there from being a stabilized structure on the Haitian on the island of Haiti. It's been that way for over 200 years since they had the audacity to fight back against the colonial powers. But people forget Thomas Jefferson wrote to Lafayette about how to dispose the Haitian problem. And because of that, it's been the goal of Western governments for the last 200 plus years to control that island. So do I think this is simply 2 rogue 20-year-olds who got into a Fortnite chat room and decided they were going to take things too far? No, I do not. I think these are people who are simply part of a call and a greater plan and a greater plot to bring Thanksgiving to the island of Haiti. And if they were to succeed, in 100 years, we will write them as being heroes of civilizing and bringing Christianity to the island or something else, whatever they told us during the Great Exploration period. But we need to be digging deeper into exactly how far this goes before the boats start really showing up off the coast of Haiti.
But
Yes.
please continue.
Yeah, I agree with Attorney Patillo, because I think it is greater than just this 20 and 21-year-old person. I think there are other co-conspirators that need to be found out, because you are correct. How is it that young person, Gavin Weisenberg, was able to fly to Thailand? He didn't have enough money to take the class, but he had enough money to fly to Thailand. How is it that he had enough money to join the fire academy, fail out of the fire academy? I mean, that's just silly in and of itself. And then how is it that the United States Air Force, which we really need to look at, because they do background checks. The United States government used to do background checks. How is it that this individual is plotting and planning all of these things, but then all of a sudden Tanner Thomas is now part of the U.S. Air Force? What a disgrace to the United States Air Force, to the United States government, to have allowed someone to enter the military with this kind of background. I agree that we should have done more to research, and we should have had more in the past 4 days since the Eastern District of Texas announced through their press release that these 2 individuals had been captured and indicted for this type of crime. Where is this coming from? So I agree with Attorney Patillo in that. And I also agree with Attorney Mark Francher. The spiritual death of the United States has caused all of this harm, and particularly for what you said earlier, Beavis and Butthead, to take national spotlight. How is it that we can change things? And I think one of the solutions that I've talked about in the past, it's currently, of course, stalled because Congress hasn't been doing a lot of things, but the Toussaint Louverture investment plan. That is something that the United States and the people of the United States and people who are entering Congress can do in order to help resolve the problems that are currently going down in Haiti. There are people that are bringing in the guns, like Attorney Patillo said. There are people that are bringing in this divisiveness, that mentality of divisiveness, into the capital city of Port-au-Prince. I was fortunate enough in order to be able to continue to speak with my family. But when Hurricane Melissa was coming through, there wasn't enough preparedness available because the systems had been broken. And so when we're thinking about the Toussaint Louverture investment plan, that would be an opportunity for people. So like Adele Regis, if you become congressman of the second congressional district, I would ask that you support that bill. I would ask that you support that, because the infrastructure that's currently in Haiti, the roads, the housing, the education, alert systems for things like the hurricane, which killed 25 lives in Haiti, and of course impacted Jamaica and other places, is devastating. Without the investment to rebuild Haiti, these Beavis and Butthead characters will continue to rise up, because the United States is not ready to really take on the role that they should have been taking on, which is to protect Haiti and to rebuild Haiti after they have the Haitian people have given so much to the United States, including in the Louisiana Purchase. I knew you was probably going to bring that up, Santita, but the Louisiana Purchase, where did that come from? Haitians.
Yeah, but you know what? I think of Walter Rodney's book, how Europe underdeveloped Africa, and I don't think it is in the interest of the imperialist for Haiti to be on their feet. Like, they don't want Africa. They don't want the global South to become strong, because then they can't take advantage. They want to promote chaos. Of course, they could support the lower bill. They could, but they don't want to. Congress has not, these people, it's not that they don't want to work, it's they've been prevented from working. Stalling on the Epstein files, stalling on continuing to give money to billionaires and soon to be trillionaires. I think we need to be clear that we are being gamed. I can't help but think of this, so many nefarious activities, Attorney Fancher, that in which we've engaged, where you see these figures who are moved around the world, and they, with no apparent source of income or wealth, and then they're put into place to do something so big, like overtake a country, because it sounds like they were promoting an internal coup, Mark.
Yeah, and I think that what is very often difficult for people like us, who are progressive, people who are people of color, to comprehend, is the extent to which the imperialists, and particularly those who are in the tradition of white supremacy, are threatened by anyone who strikes against them effectively. It doesn't matter how limited the strike is that's effective. It doesn't matter how few people are involved are effective. But Haiti committed the unpardonable crime of humiliating Napoleon's army. And they have never been forgiven for that, because of the inspiration that was triggered by that resistance. That act of resistance is responsible for countless numbers of insurrections by enslaved Africans throughout the Western Hemisphere. And they know how dangerous an example is. And so, in turn, over the decades, they have tried to make an example of Haiti by punishing it repeatedly, and especially intensifying the punishment on those occasions when there have been efforts to strike back yet again. So when Jean-Bertrand Aristide said back in 2003, in 1825, France came to us and said that we needed to pay them restitution for their lost gains as a result of their loss of our country as a colony. That was wrong then, and it was. And we want restitution. We want you to pay back, because it has had a crippling effect on our country. Within a year, they came in with U.S. collaboration and kidnapped Jean-Bertrand Aristide, a head of state. At gunpoint, took him out of Haiti, and he ended up ultimately in South Africa. And then you have someone like Assata Shakur, who's one woman, one little Black woman, who was accused of horrible crimes, which nobody believes that she actually committed, convicted, and locked down in the highest security prison that was in New Jersey. And not only did she escape from that prison and escape with style. But she managed to elude capture long enough for her to ultimately relocate to Cuba, where she lived out her life. That's not usually the narrative for someone who stands up and resists. And so they hold grudges. I mean, and they don't like examples. They didn't like tiny little Grenada when it was governed by the New Jewel movement. Grenada was just a progressive government that was trying to bring reform to a teeny tiny little island. And because it stood up and it wanted to pursue an independent course for its people, because it was friendly to everybody, including Cuba and the Sandinistas in Nicaragua and others, then they declared that this is in our backyard and it will not stand. And so they invaded Grenada. So they don't like these kinds of examples. And I do think that the focus really should be on developing Haiti, stabilizing it and helping it to become all that it can be, because it's filled with brilliant people with lots of potential. But I think that as we do that, we have to be aware of the obstacle that we confront in doing that, in just the fact that it has been a beacon of hope and inspiration for African people everywhere, in that it was successful and effective in striking against white supremacy.
You know, Adal, just when you see the lack of coverage that the corporate media have given to this story, what does that say to you?
Unfortunately, today and for at least the past 10 decades, Haiti has become a bit of a byword. And we're also living in a time where even here at home, we have to have a conversation about critical race theory, where they are trying to rewrite or even remove history, any type of history, not only that address some form of accountability in terms of how some of us got here, but also any type of history that would put us in the best light. We're also in a time where anytime we try to shed a bit of light, just in terms of our plight, we've seen a bit of a pushback from the top, because they want to portray themselves as victims. And so I'm not surprised, because for years, when you did turn on the TV, if it was not a national disaster, like a hurricane, if you will, national weather situation, or political uprising, you never really in the media see any type of positive stories that essentially highlight what makes us resilient, what makes us beautiful, or even shedding light into like Northern Haiti, for instance, that until most recently was still to some extent thriving, or at least maintaining. So it does not surprise me that we're not hearing that conversation this day, because let's be real. The media right now is also scared of the current president. He's whipped a lot of people into submission and essentially threatened, if you will, to take any type of action if they're not aligned, or if you will, whatever it is we speak of is not aligned with the propaganda that they are trying to promote. Hence why we're fortunate that we have spaces like this and other spaces where we actually get to tell these stories. But I'm not surprised. Even before this administration, in the media, we have not really been getting any positive news for the past 50 decades, not because of the fact that some of the challenges in Haiti has also been the main highlight whenever it would come up, but also because they don't care to talk about the history or the positive elements about us, if you will, which leads to a situation where you have two guys who, again, with their superiority conflicts, Columbus wannabes, I guess they did enough history to try to learn Creole, but not learn enough history to find out what actually happened when Black folks got upset and started to push back against people that try to do to them what these guys were planning on doing. So my point is, I'm not surprised, but I think a way for us to be able to move forward is that we need to start highlighting the history of the country, to start showing the positive aspect about it. But also, if we're going to talk about reinvesting in Haiti, a great angle is also for us to start factoring and shedding light into the history that the United States and Haiti have had since its inception. Again, I talked about the fact that Haitian bled for the American Revolution before their own revolution. Also, let's talk about the fact that W.B. Du Bois, arguably one of the brightest minds of the 20th century, co-founder of the NAACP, one of the oldest civil rights organizations, Haitian American. Let's talk about the city in which I live here today, Chicago, Illinois, founded by a Haitian immigrant that, by the way, came in the spirit of collaboration with the indigenous, not in the spirit of genocide. We have history with this country, positive history that shows not just Haitian and American relations, but even other immigrants in terms of what happens when instead of us being focused on what divides us, even on racial and ethnic backgrounds, what happens when it comes together when we actually come and focus on collaboration. And last but not least, if we want to talk about reinvesting in Haiti, and as I've mentioned before, shed more light into that history, to start shifting the mindset of people here, both at home and abroad, we just also need to just take time and be honest with ourselves about the time in which we live in, where the people that are currently in power have zero interest in actually having our story being told. And we got to start pushing back against this.
Attorney Patillo, why don't we go down the rabbit hole a bit? Because we have seen, what do they say? Evil men plot, but good men must plan. We have seen, as we look at history, these obscure persons who are pulled into these nefarious plans. What did you mean by that? I'd like you to elaborate a little bit further on what you said at the top of your remarks.
Well, I think all of us have grown a healthy skepticism for the official narrative given to us by the U.S. government over the years. Whether it be 9/11, whether it be the JFK assassination. I spent the summer going through the MLK files, the details around the MLK assassination, all the way back to the Tuskegee experiments. However far you want to go back, the American government has had a history of lying to its people about events. So when you see something like this, where the math ain't mathing, as the young people like to say, where you're sitting there, you're saying, if you study political science in college or international affairs, they tell you about the rational actor model of thinking, which is the idea you have to assume the person you're talking to is going to be working in their enlightened self-interest. So for these two young men involved, does it really make sense that they just thought one day, hey, man, we're going to go to an island that we've never been to, and we're going to kill all the men with a couple homeless people, and then we're just going to go on a raping spree, and it's going to be great. That sounds insane. So using a rational actor model, you would say they were more than likely recruited by some people. Somebody was financing them to do these things. Somebody was giving them the steps to take. You go to the Air Force so you can learn how to fly planes. You go to Thailand so you can learn how to work boats. You're going to need firefighter and EMT training. Here go some classes for you to take in order for you to know how to speak the language. And here's some money so you can do this, because clearly you can't have a full-time job while doing all these steps needed to plan this coup. That makes a whole lot more sense. And so when you look at it from that perspective, then you have to tie it into what America has done historically within our hegemonic sphere of influence. We're taught in school that the Monroe Doctrine, and before that Washington Farewell Address, was almost like this fence meant to keep the European powers out of the Caribbean and out of the backyard of the United States of America. Think of it from the other perspective. If you're outside of America, the Monroe Doctrine was really a prison, trapping you within this sphere of influence of the United States. So that during the Cold War, if Russia wanted to bring in aid and supplies to help Central and South American governments, well, then that made you subject to the U.S. military intervening to remove, quote unquote, communism from their backyard. Right now, we're seeing the U.S. military interdiction is about to strike Venezuela any day now, because they claim that the Maduro government is incompatible with the U.S. value system, and we get to decide who their president is. The same that we did in Grenada, the same that we did in Nicaragua, the same that we did in Panama, the same that we do in Haiti all the time. So when you have the Gerald R. Ford class carrier, the most advanced aircraft carrier in the world, sitting there ready to strike Venezuela, it ain't that far from Haiti either. It wouldn't take much for them to turn that carrier that way. because their goal is to ensure that no one else is influencing this region. No one else has control over the resources of this region. Just because you stop calling something an empire doesn't mean it's no longer an empire. How do we think things worked during the imperial period? That the king would just sit in all their colonies at all time? No, you set up your local controlled governors who then ship back the resources to the colonial power. So when we're looking at these things and these individuals, we need to be finding out, is the FBI investigating these people to find out who they were connected with? Is other documents that our government is hiding from us that will tell you exactly how deep this goes? Because the only thing that makes sense for this to be a state level action, a national level action as part of a broader strategy, and a couple of the young patsies, the young idiots get caught. We're talking about the King assassination. They would have you believe that James Earl Ray was some kind of master spy who assassinated Martin Luther King. He was in prison for 7 years, somehow escaped, moved to Chicago, then he went to New Orleans, then he went to Mexico, then he went to California, then he drove back to Birmingham, then he ended up in Tennessee, he was in Canada for a while, then he assassinated King, somehow flew back to Canada, then to Portugal for a month, then to the UK where he was finally arrested with no money, with no training. He was a career petty thief. He flunked out of the army because he couldn't pass marksmanship, and he also was apparently intellectually disabled. But they want you to believe that he was the sniper who took out King from across the street. And it just so happens Merrill Mac McCullough, who was holding King's head, he was the one kneeling down in the picture, was a CIA informant. But yeah, believe us, that James Earl Ray was the person who did it. I just want people to have a more skeptical view and not to take the sensationalized headline and compare what is happening now to what has happened historically. And the fact that this goes down at the same time that America has 15,000 U.S. troops in the Caribbean, F-35s, B-1 Lancers, B-52s, naval assault ships ready to invade Venezuela, this seems like it's part of a bigger strategy within the hemisphere.
Was that you, Adele?
No, that was me. I was agreeing with him. You know, it made me actually think about the question that you had asked about the media narrative. And I think Adal answered it in a good perspective, but I wanted to add to that perspective. I think the reason why these people feel so empowered in order to attack Haiti was because of the narrative that's going on in the media. They keep trying to dismiss the resilience of the people. And I think Mark Fanshaw also brought that up as well, that they really just don't understand their history. And so they have empowered themselves to believe that they could do something. They don't even know the history of Toussaint Louverture, in the sense that Toussaint Louverture was such a smart person that he told Spain that, you know, the British were coming for his colonies. He told the British people that Spain was coming for the colonies. He told the French people, because he also became a general in the French army, that the French were coming to take, you know, that the British and the Spanish were uniting. And he lied to them all, but he basically used that strategic tactic in order for them to take each other out, in order to build power in Haiti. So, and of course, educate himself on their plans so that he can ultimately save Haiti. But in order to be here in this day, 200 plus years later, and we're still fighting for recognition, it goes back into our educational system. Now, I understand that the current administration is trying to dismantle the Department of Education, but this is a key thing that people need to understand. The reason why he wants to do something like that is because the longer you stay ignorant, the more he's able to do without your knowledge. But if you have empowered yourself with actual knowledge of how things work and how countries have fallen in the past, and how people have actually strategically broken down the country, and how countries have been unable to survive without the help of others, then you will not allow certain things to occur. But the media has been used in order to really strike at the nerve of ignorance and perpetuate that ignorance. Because how is it that Jovenel Moïse was assassinated in 2021, and we are now in 2025, and Haiti still exists? Haiti is still running. People are still eating. People are still going to work. People are still doing what they need to do. However, it could be improved. Where did the gangs get their guns from? Where did the gangs get the strategy in order to try to attack airports from time to time? Where is it that they get this divisive rhetoric. In fact, I think in the northern part of Haiti, they're looking right now for Mr. Innocent. I think that's what they call him now. Mr. Innocent, they're looking for him. There's $1 million reward. They said that he killed an American after kidnapping. He was part of some kind of kidnapping ransom ring in which 2 Americans were kidnapped, obviously Haitian Americans, because they went down there to Haiti to visit. And then one of the wife resisted, and so she was killed. But the husband was the family paid for the husband to be ultimately released, and so now there's $1 million reward. Why is it that the Haitian people are not going to give him up? It's the same reason why the Haitian people allowed Duvalier, who literally stole from the country, and I believe his ex-wife, right, Michelle Binet, also stole from the country, and they ran some kind of, from what I understand, drug trafficking ring that allowed them to gain more power, more wealth. And they didn't kill him when he came back. When he came back, he was able to come back peacefully. Jean-Claude Duvalier was able to live out the rest of his life and die in his own country. I think people do not understand the compassion that exists and is flowing through the bloods of the Haitian people. Even me, I wasn't born in Haiti. I was born here in the United States. But that's what's been taught to me by my immigrant parents. I believe, if we look at the people who are born here, raised here, that education has allowed us to continue to be resilient, to recognize that even if the media is trying to make us look bad and make us look stupid and make us look like we're not anything, we know better. We've been taught better. And I think we need, as a community, not only in the United States, to teach each other better, but quite frankly, I think Ada also said it, we need to re-educate people on the history so that people don't make these types of mistakes.
Well, I'm wondering though, I think that you're absolutely right, but one has to wonder whose interest it is for Haiti to be destabilized, because we all have these heroic stories and they're important to tell and they're important to know. But on one level, these people, the more heroic you are, the more they want to oppress you, suppress you, Mark. That's the plan. And, of course, we've got these, everyone knows, anyone. And the thing is, your foes know who you are. And when you come to the United States, there's no one more resilient than Black Americans. And they know it. That's why we continue to get pressed down, because we have not stopped. Black people are just built that way. And I think oppressed people continue. They don't stop. If you go to Northern Ireland, you'll see that same fighting spirit in the Irish there. But so, who is advantaged, Mark? Robert, Adele, Anastasia. I want to go around. We only have about 10 minutes or so, but I want to find out from you. Who is advantaged by the oppression, the suppression of the Haitian people? Mark Fancher.
Yeah, I think that there's a long-standing interest in keeping Haiti destabilized for purposes of empire. The imperialism wants to dominate and control everything, but especially a place like Haiti, which has such a tradition of resistance. And if they are allowed to prosper, then it's really not so much what they will do on that territory. It's the example that they will set for the rest of the Caribbean. And the desire that, and the flame of resistance that will continue to blaze on all of those islands. And it will no longer be under the domination of the Yankees in the North. But, we've made some references to conspiracy and all of that. Let me put a fine point on what I think may have been the objective here. I think it's entirely possible that the U.S. was becoming very concerned about these forces in Haiti, which they have styled for propaganda purposes as gangs, which, if you ask them, they say that they are revolutionary organizations that are looking out for the people. I don't know specifically what they're doing or how they're doing it, but I can very well imagine that the U.S. is very threatened by that. And the potential that these types of organized groups have for stabilizing the island and undoing all of the efforts that the U.S. has been engaged in for a very long period of time to keep the island in chaos. And I can see them figuring out a way to take control of this little island that these two men were supposedly going to invade and using it as a staging ground for operations that, if necessary, could be launched against the mainland. And that these two guys might have been a part of this. They may have been recruits. They may have been perceived as people that had some potential leadership. But we always have to remember the great potential that young white males without a real cause have for absolute stupidity. And it could very well be that they decided to hijack the mission, that while they had been given orders to stabilize that island for purposes of for creating a staging ground for monitoring and for possible intervention, that they decided that it would be cooler, it would be much more fun to take over the island and to engage their weird fantasies. And it's at that point that they had to be shut down. So I think that, you know, we can't underestimate the stupidity of young white males who don't have a cause. And I think that the best evidence of it is a white male whose development was arrested and he found himself in the White House. And his stupidity is on full display for all of us to see on a daily basis, where he engages his craziest and wildest impulses. And it helps to remind us that pretty much anything is possible with that demographic.
Adala Regis, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives from the 2nd Congressional District of Illinois. Uh, I need some closing thoughts from you. Just where do you want us to go? Because I think that people need to know this story because it sounds absurd, but there is something to it, I think.
Well, as I've indicated earlier, when the news came to me, I thought it was ridiculous. And I would say that, again, I believe that that was a product of white supremacy ideology that's continued to be perpetuated, even on steroid today, because of our current unfortunate leader that we have right now. But if we want to look at it from the grand scheme of things, in terms of who benefits from Haiti being the way it is, we shouldn't look any further than after 1804, when even after Haitians won their independence and they've established the Haitian National Bank, New York Times came up with a report almost half a decade ago that highlighted how France, through the Crédit Industriel et Commercial, a French bank, was working with some of the Haitian elites at the time, siphoning taxpayers' money to go to France, to which the New York Times was implying may have contributed to building the Eiffel Tower. And later on in the 1900s, after they were done plundering, Citibank came and was running the same racket. And so this is no different than some of what we're about to see, or that's starting to happen much more and more now here in the US, where you have a small percentage of folks, both local and also international, that are in cahoots and a lot of times have most of the resources. And I'm not saying it's all, but I'm saying a small percentage that are leveraging those resources to keep promoting certain propaganda to create one image on one end, while they're doing their deed and their heist, if you will, in the background. And so I say it's a local problem. If I were to address some of the folks in Haiti that are bad actors that are, if you will, creating the situation in which we're in locally right now. But I'm also saying, because Haiti has had a history of dealing with the international community, if you will, just plundering it, I say I also put the blame as on the international community as a group that we also should be engaging and focusing on in terms of how we're ready to address and hold accountable in terms of how we're getting ready to move forward. And I'll say these last two things. To back up what I was saying, the UN, if I remember correctly, at least 5 years ago, had released a report for the first time in which they showed that there was that small elite group that they've essentially have to freeze their account, both their American and their Canadian accounts, once it was proven that they were essentially creating a lot of the mess that we're seeing today, in which obviously the media goes in and then propagates to say, look, Haiti, again, is causing ruckus, is causing trouble. I say that, number one, if we want to talk about moving forward, we have to talk about accountability locally in Haiti, but also accountability here at home, because everything that Donald Duck is saying right now to divide us is actually spilling over to the point where it's essentially radicalizing folks who, not just Haiti, but in other maybe smarter way and more clever ways, are finding ways to go and exploit other places in Latin America, if you will. So how do we move forward?
Mm-hmm.
We, as I mentioned before, we come back to talk about history, where every time we've collaborated, we saw what we had in common. We were able to progress. But whenever we were fighting each other, a small precision on top was always exploiting and making money out of us.
Mm. Attorney Sanat and Attorney Patillo, I literally have a couple of minutes left because I've got to go to this next hour in which we're talking about Venezuela, because it looks like we're going to strike there. So, Attorney Sanat, I have 1 minute for you.
Well, thank you again for allowing me to come in, and thank you for exposing me to such great panelists. I enjoyed the discussion, but I think the one thing that I want people to really recognize is that the international community has had their foot on the neck of Haiti for years. Why do they even want Haiti? People need to know. Well, we have tons of resources. When it comes to economic opportunities that exist in Haiti, it's a plethora. The country in and of itself historically used to be considered the pearl of the Antilles. And the reason why is because it brought so much fortune by the enslavement and the work and the products that were served internationally to the community. That's why people want to continue to suppress Haiti. So if the community truly wants to rally around that propaganda, we're going to continue to see these problems. But if you rally around the propaganda that we're trying to bring forth, which is the truth, that if the Toussaint Louverture investment plan goes through, the international community will stop interfering. And that's part of the plan. If people look at HR 1214, they'll see that part of the plan is that the international community will stop trying to put their foot on the neck of Haiti so that they can get better and of course become part of the international foothold the way that they should be.
Robert Patillo, please close us out.
Piggybacking on what my sister just said, the reason that Haiti was so rich as a colony was not even just what it had, but where it was located. Think about some of the richest cities and countries in the world. If you're looking at Qatar, the Straits of Hormuz. If you're looking at the Philippines, the Straits of Malacca. You're looking at Djibouti. You're looking at the Straits of Al-Badab. Each nation has what's called an exclusive economic zone, which allows you to control maritime transit within 200 miles of your coast. If you look at a map of Haiti and look at their exclusive economic zone, essentially, if Haiti was a Caribbean power, if they have their own navy, if they have their own ability to control commerce, you would not be able to transit anything in and out of the Caribbean without paying Haiti. That's the reason the Philippines is rich. That's the reason Qatar is rich, when you have a bottleneck of that nature. So when you say who benefits from Haiti being weak, every single Western power benefits from Haiti being weak, because if you put a strong government at the location where Haiti is, you'll be able to control all trade. You'll essentially have another Panama Canal that nations and the corporations have to pay to transit through, and that's why it's important for them to keep Haiti weak and dependent, because they exercise their strength. They'd be one of the richest nations globally.
There's something for us to think about, everybody. None of these things happen in a vacuum. And to have these two obscure young men who fought to do something so big, when all indications in their lives, they've never thought that way before. Wow, they're barely able to act locally, but they were thinking globally. Something to think about, everybody. But I tell you, this imperialist mindset is real, but so is the freedom mindset. Keep on fighting, keep on rising. We will win. All people deserve to be sovereign and free. And when you obtain your freedom, you need to be just and merciful. Think about that, everybody. All right, let's talk about Venezuela. Will we go to war in Venezuela? Will we wage war on Venezuela? If that's coming, why? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute.